people are saying that climate change is like the slavery of the 21st century. I don't think anyone in the globe will say slavery is okay today. That's the same thing with climate change. But it took a while, right? I mean, it wasn't that slavery went overnight, went away. It took a lot of effort for it to go away. So I think even climate change is, unfortunately, we don't have that much time. Climate change is not a problem for the Earth. The Earth can handle high temperatures. It's the humans that can't handle it.
Thank you for joining the Transform Impossible, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have Dr. Jai Asundi, who's the Executive Director of CSTEP, the Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy. His work involves R&D in the field of emergency and disaster management. He mentors teams in areas spanning climate, energy, and urban development, and has spearheaded the establishment for artificial intelligence for social impact as a sector of work and the creation of the Center for Air Pollution Studies, CAPS, at CSTEP. He is a senior member of the IEEE and an Adjunct Associate Professor in the Department of Engineering and Public Policy at Carnegie Mellon University. His broader research interest lies in decision-making and the development of decision support systems for diverse public policy problems. So thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to have you, Jai. I really appreciate you taking time. So let's start the conversation with breathing. Because that, I believe, it's the basic human right. But today that is a problem. That's a serious problem. India suffers terribly because of Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. Pollution is like everywhere. The air is filled with smog. Delhi is the world's most polluted capital. India is home to, I don't know the exact data, but some say that it's home to 22 most polluted cities in the world. Now, besides that, India suffers most when it comes to pollution-linked deaths. That's the highest number of deaths in the world when it comes to pollution-linked deaths. This is like really serious. We like really suffering because of the pollution. Who do you think is responsible for India's pollution problem? First question. And what can we do about it?
Well, first let me say thank you, Eddie, for inviting me to your series, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you. I know you started the innings with a real bouncer for me, right? It's a tough ball. Let me try to take this, right? So there is something very simple that's also going on here. As you know, like all climate problems, even air pollution is a collective action problem. It is not like one single source that you can say that this is the reason. So if we can solve this particular problem, we will have a solution. You do have a very simple situation that air pollution is caused due to multiple reasons, right? One of them is anthropogenic activity, which is, us burning fossil fuels, us burning things in ways that they are not supposed to be burned, and it creates air pollution, right? So, and why is the problem more so today than it is before? Simply because, more people. We've just got a lot more people in the country today than we did, let's say, 50 years ago or even 100 years ago, right? So now, but is the problem serious? It is indeed serious. There's no question about it. I think the ministry also has acknowledged, and they've called them non-attainment cities. I mean, there is this National Clean Air Program, which is looking to clean up the air in the cities. Now, that also does not acknowledge the fact that there could be an air pollution problem in rural areas. Sadly, we have not measured it as much as we would have measured in urban areas. Urban areas have a lot more instruments and ways to measure, but we have not measured in rural areas as much. New techniques like satellite monitoring is a new way to do that. But for now, the reference grade monitors are typically in urban areas. We've measured in urban areas, and we have now said that these are the urban areas that have problems, that their average is above the mandated standard, and that's why they're called non-attainment. And I think the move now on, I think the biggest National Clean Air Program says that by 2023, we should reduce air pollution in non-attainment cities by 30% by this period of time. So there's a target, there's a date. And the question now is, what do we need to do in order to do that? And Like I mentioned, it's a collective action problem. So what we have to do is we can't be treating things like silver bullets, right? We can't be saying put this here, put this here. It is not just that. It is a whole host of things, right? So what are the major sources? One is, of course, transportation. All of them burning diesel, burning petrol, burning fossil fuels, driving along a road. They are non-point sources. They are all over the place. They will cause for a rise in air pollution. That's number one. And this has also been shown through the studies in the last year when there was a lockdown and traffic didn't travel. They actually showed that the air quality actually improved. So that may give you a scientific sense of saying that where these sources are. The second source is also, our anthropogenic activity, right? Things like waste burning. I don't know how many of you or your listeners go around and notice people are randomly burning things on the road. But clearly that's not the way to clear up the dirt. It has to be taken somewhere, maybe processed properly. And so there is a broader need for populations to start thinking in terms of, solid waste, wet waste, recyclable waste, different types of waste that can, be used in manners, and make sure that they are not burnt. But that's the broader perspective that I can give with you on the air pollution issue. I think there are lots of groups working on this problem. But like I said, it's not about one department. It's not like you going to the pollution control board and saying, what are you doing? The pollution control board can say, okay, we've put the rules in place. But then it's a matter of implementing the rules, enforcing the rules, right? That's the other part of it, right? How will you enforce the watchman down your street not burning garbage to keep himself warm at night? How will you ensure that? And he is adding to that problem. It's what COVID has taught us is that, yes, if the messaging is right and the way we communicate to people is right, we could get the right behaviors out of it.
You said that this is a problem because of human activities. Fossil fuel is responsible. You said more people. Now, don't you think that having more people is an advantage? Because the larger the population, you can leverage that population to do something. Yes, obviously you mentioned that we have a major issue when it comes to security guards or in agriculture where they're burning their waste products, and that is. But then I think besides that as an issue which nobody should be undermining, industries is such a huge problem. There definitely needs to be a larger conversation of how we can have policies where industries relook at the way they function. Because obviously the largest problem for climate crisis seems to be fossil fuel and the extraction of fossil fuel. And that is being done largely because of industries. Today in India, the state-run agencies such as Coal India, NTPC, they are the largest polluters in the world. Besides them, we have the Reliance Industries, which is a private organization, which is amongst the largest polluter in the world. Shouldn't government be doing something about this rather than acknowledging it and treating it as a band-aid solution? We have people dying. We have the largest death in the world due to pollution. Should we just look at band-aid solutions, or should we have deeper conversations where it's not just acknowledging the problem, but having a policy in place which is implemented no matter how? Because so far, if you see, in Bombay, we had this plastic ban which lasted just momentarily. Can't we do something about this where we create a narrative where people understand that this is a serious problem? Because just recently, this April, 101 Nobel laureates published an open letter calling for an international cooperation to immediately end the extraction of fossil fuels. When these many brilliant humans in the world are saying this is an issue which needs to be tackled urgently, why isn't the government looking at it that way, in a serious way?
So let me start by responding to your first point, is that yes, people are a resource. Obviously you can do a lot of things with people, but you have to make sure that you provide for them adequately, right? And one of the ways to provide for people, and human history has shown that providing for them in terms of reducing their mortality, reducing their morbidity, looking at better healthcare, better outcomes of livelihood and longevity and things like that are all connected to energy. And so you have to look at the per capita energy. So the more people you have, irrespective of the what they can do for you, you also have to see them in terms of the fact that you have to provide them with energy in order for them to function in doing the things that they need to do. Talking about industry and talking about the power sector, which is actually the biggest sector that consumes coal and things like that. Till 2012, I don't think we had an economically viable option to provide energy to our citizens without burning fossil fuels. I think renewables were still very expensive till very recently. So from that perspective, and you're talking about systems that have been in place for hundreds of years. Yeah, so you're trying to change something in a matter of a few years, which took hundreds of years to be set in place. So to expect that suddenly people are going to turn around and say, you know what, we'll change the way we've been doing things because we see some signals in the market today is unreasonable. I think we need to be careful in the way we design our future systems. Yes, we should put in a lot more thought into it. There's no question about that. Till about, say, 20 years ago, people were talking about nuclear energy. But then we had a differences of opinion there too, right? People said that, no, this is too unsafe for us, right? Now, that is also no CO2, does not produce the kind of pollution that you want. But then, yes, it could have catastrophic failures, which you're really afraid of. So you don't want to deal with that. But at the same time, I think the switch from fossil fuels to renewable sources of energy is actually very recent. I think it's a welcome change, and it is a way in which we could definitely move forward. But I would be wary of trying to put it on, because again, industry is needed. Where do we employ our people? Where will they earn a livelihood? What will they do for a living? I mean, it's not just about cleaning the air, but you have to clean in the air along with providing the jobs that people need. Now, yes, in the last decade, we've been seeing a lot more options that have been worked on for the past 30, 40. I mean, hydrogen has been around for 40, 50 years. Only recently, we are seeing developments that I would say reach a level where we can say, yes, we could try this out. Only in the recent years, we have talked about large-scale solar plants. I mean, till then, it used to be these, on our calculators, we used to see the solar panel, or on some experiments, we used to see that. But by and large, I think it's a fairly recent phenomenon. And, the government, to the extent it is possible, they've set policies in place. They've said that, we'll have electric vehicles, the renewable energy target that India put out in for the Paris COP, where we said 40% will be fossil fuel free. Even at that time, everyone said it was too ambitious, right? And now we are already talking about exceeding it, right? So, obviously there is some credit where credit is due, is that, things have changed. But I think the important thing right now is for us to keep our focus on, two things, right? One is, of course, making sure we provide energy to all our citizens. That's paramount. I think we cannot say that, the few of us who are, where we are, we've got electricity, we are comfortable in our homes, we've got air conditioners keeping us thermal comfort. But then on what basis can I deny somebody living in a village access to electricity or energy, for that matter, by saying that no, now we have exceeded our limit, you can't get it anymore? I think that's unfair. I don't think we can do that. What we have to look at is providing energy to all. That is an important thing. And second is cleaning up the energy that we are providing. So that's, both of them have to go hand in hand. And I think there's an opportunity.
Right. Talking about fossil fuel, its time has come, but somehow most of the industries at this point in time are still being funded. The fossil fuel industry, I'm talking about the fossil fuel industries, are being funded by the banks, are being given subsidies by the government. How do we tackle this? Because your clean renewable energy is already here. It's already cheaper than fossil fuel energy. What will it take for us to transition from fossil fuel to clean energy?
there are two units I will try to bring to the discussion here. One unit is the kilowatt hour, which is the amount of energy, right? And then you've got the capacity, which is the kilowatt. Now, not all kilowatt hours are the same. For example, I can provide you a kilowatt hour at noon at 10 paise, 20 paise. But you may want the kilowatt hour at 10 at night. And that could be 5 rupees, let's say, for sake of argument. Right? So now the kilowatt hours are not the same. But when we talk about capacity, we always talk in terms of as though everything is fungible. Right? I talk about solar. I would say, oh, I have a 10 megawatt plant. But the 10 megawatt plant only generates energy when the sun is there, not when the sun is there. Same goes for any wind. Yes, biomass is different, geothermal, all the other energies, yes, a lot more stable. So there is this notion of firm power and flexible power. Now, which is why we should be very careful when we equate prices, right? Prices of thermal power with prices
Can
of
we have storage? Can't we have storage?
Yeah, so now, okay, so this is exactly the point I was trying to make, is that what you need to then do is add the cost of storage. So then when you add the cost of storage, you will find that actually coal is cheaper than solar plus storage, right? It's not comparable today. I mean, it's
is the perception or the outlook of how we look at the problem is the bigger problem, because this climate crisis is a problem. But then we have this capitalism or a system, how we function, which kind of is a loop, because we need to see the maths into the ecosystem. And we are not...
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. So, just to complete that previous question that you had about the banks and others, these are all legacy things, right? We are not talking about loans happening yesterday. I mean, these are things that have been in place for a long period of time. And these investments are 30 years. You don't put a thermal power plant with the purpose of saying, okay, after 5 years, I will trash it, right? It's a 30, 40. In fact, some of the thermal power plants in Karnataka have been around for a very long time, right? So the point is that these are long-lived assets, and these assets are also not something that you can completely dismantle tomorrow. It's not that easy, because there's a lot of like I talked to you about the complexities around this, right? One is the coal industry, right? The mining coal industry. There are lots of states that depend on those revenues. How are we planning to compensate? And this is what they call under what is called the just transition. That when we transition, how are we making sure that we are taking care of the people that we are going to, by policy, tell them that you no longer can do this activity? And to be very candid with you, a lot of our generation as well as transmission companies are looking at renewable energy along with storage. They're looking at not just the storage in the terms of batteries, but also looking at pumped hydro, right? Where there's hydro reserves, and the hydro reserves can be reused to basically pump water up when power is available. And then when power is not available, you let the water flow down, and then that will produce hydro energy. So you can then put it back into the grid. So these are various ideas that are being explored by various entities. There is also this notion of inter-regional transport. That is, in the months of monsoon, the southern region or the early months of monsoon, which is around the month of June, July, the southern region of India actually has surplus power, simply because the wind blows. There's more, not as much solar, but there's a lot more wind energy, and that and actually there's a shortage of power in the north. So in fact, if you can push the power from south to north, and you have interstate transfers, suddenly you can not have to build more coal thermal power plants in the process, right? So absolutely. But I think some of these are very deep technical questions that need to be answered before we jump into it. It's not like, you jump into the water and then say, okay, to swim, I need a float, and then start shouting for a float. You got to be doing it in advance. And I think that's the key thing here, is that if we can get to a point where we analyze the situation in the manner that's possible. I don't think sustainability can happen with 5 people in the corner saying, okay, we'll do it all. It requires 99 people saying we will do it all, and maybe that one person we'll have to figure out some way to, not to use a violent term, but the term that they use is beat him into submission, right? That he will also start complying to what is that. But that's about it.
The reason India got hit so badly with the pandemic is because we were not prepared. We were caught completely unprepared for the pandemic, and that's the reason we today stand the highest casualty when it comes to the globe. Being second only to America. Now, obviously, we know that climate crisis is coming, and it's just a matter of fact. And we need to, like you said, rightfully, collectively take an action. Something that benefits all. You mentioned that thermal plants obviously are going to get disrupted, and what do we do about that? But we are in the greatest technological transition humans are ever going to witness. The fourth industrial revolution, as we call it, because all of the technologies are converging: artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain, AR, VR, MR, and so on and so forth. I think possibly this decade or so is going to take us from the notion of scarcity to the future of abundance. It's not cliched. This is not even cliched. We have, like you mentioned, solar energy. The sun is there. It's free. Yes, it's expensive at this point in time, the battery storage or whatever, but technology is moving at an exponential pace. Do you see technology playing a larger role to create an equitable future where you said, can't we have that energy? Yes, we have the energy, but we have not tapped it right. In this decade itself, I believe the solar energy price is going to be much, much lesser than fossil fuel, plus the battery, because there is some insane innovation going around the world when it comes to capturing as well as storage. And somehow I feel that capitalism is the problem. Like, when you talk about the climate crisis, people say that we need a system change. Would you kind of agree to that? Would you say that maybe in this decade or the next, maybe energy could be available freely for everyone?
Let me try to answer this in a very slightly broader way. One is, of course, let me also state for a fact that I don't think coal is going to go away in any time soon. It's not going to happen. Simply because there is a lot of capacity. See, today, the generation of coal thermal power plants for India is fairly high. And our models have shown that despite how much you start moving on in the rate you're moving on, and even if it's nonlinear or whatever you may call it, you will make a dent, no doubt, but you will still have a certain amount of thermal power plants in India that will generate power for your essential services. The very fact that, yes, we didn't fly to each other and have this conversation, but we are still having this conversation over a digital. I have stable power, you have stable power, so we are able to do this. And we will need this. We need to do this even as the sun sets, as the wind dies down, everything. We need to have that. So that is something that's going to be there. Now, what are the things that are going to probably save that? One is, of course, the technologies available today in the marketplace that will clamp down on the air pollution aspects, right? So let's start with the SOx, NOx, and PM emissions from thermal power plants. We've done a study on that, and we have shown that some of these technologies are very effective and can reduce the amount of air pollution due to thermal power plants quite significantly. That's one. I'll just put that in one bucket, though it's a whole host of technologies. Number two is, of course, the carbon. What's going to happen with that? You're still emitting carbon dioxide. And this is where, again, technologies like carbon capture storage and things like that are being talked about. And, there are different ways. Again, like you mentioned, it's still very expensive. There are other parts, right? So the power sector is almost 60-70% of our CO2 emissions. Balance 30% is split between residential, industrial, transport, those kinds of things. Transport is expected to grow. But since we mentioned batteries are getting cheaper, maybe we can move to an electric future. And we could create a system by which, again, we renewable sources, charge it into our electric vehicles, and then use those electric vehicles for traveling. Now, that does two things for us, right? It solves our air pollution problem because now we are not burning fossil fuels in a non-point source manner. That's number one. Number two, we are using renewable energy. We are not burning fossil fuels like diesel, petrol, and things like that to travel around. So, I don't like to use cliches, but, killing two birds with one stone is what the whole electric mobility plan is all about. So what they show is that the average cost per kilometer, running cost of an electric vehicle is actually very small, because dealing with an IC engine is very difficult. Dealing with an electric motor is a lot easier. So suddenly that will happen. But you have to keep in mind that that will also mean lots of people who had jobs today fixing your IC engines no longer have a job. But you never know. They might get a job setting up a station, a battery station, where there is a solar power plant, a wind power plant. They're charging batteries. And then when people come in, like, you go in with your two-wheeler, you swap out your battery, it happens within 5-10 minutes, the same amount of time it took to fill petrol at your gas station, and you're up and running. So, there are a lot of opportunities. To be honest, it's hard to look into this future simply because, as you said, a lot of these changes are non-linear. Like if I told you 15 years ago that the person who sells you coconut water on the road will have a smartphone and you will pay him through digital currency, you would laugh at me, right? And this was something that I studied in graduate school in the 90s, when they were talking about micro payments for news services, right? Internet services, micro payments. They were talking about how to do micro payments. And I think the time has come for that. Do I want to subscribe to a magazine for just one article? No, but I wouldn't mind paying for that article. I might pay more than the average cost. I mean, I might pay more than 50 paise. I'll say, okay, I'll pay 2 rupees for this article. Now, is that a way to change the system? So these are, systemic changes that are, I say, likely to happen, can happen. So that's something that I'm very optimistic, because just like capitalism has taken us into this trough, I feel that maybe capitalism with the right amount of value systems attached to it is what is going to also pull us out, because suddenly we value certain things more than others. Like if we, the classic example that I'm reading a lot is that people are saying that climate change is like the slavery of the 21st century, right? The way you treated slavery that I don't think anyone in the globe will say slavery is okay today.
Right.
But I think that's the same thing with climate change. But it took a while, right? I mean, it wasn't that slavery overnight went away. It took a lot of effort for it to go away. So I think given climate changes, unfortunately, we don't have that much time, right? And I think that's where you're getting at. We don't have that much time. And so I think we have to use the tools available to our disposal. I think we can reach every human being today in far shorter time than happened 200 years ago. Right? I can reach any individual. I can get connected to any individual. There are various ways in doing that. And maybe that is the way in which we could, transform ourselves, take ourselves to another future. And then I think we have to collectively also come up with this value system, right? Which is what it is that the value system is not have this big house, big car, massive air conditioning and things like that, but saying that, let's live within ourselves. Let's live within our means, and let's not impact our ecosystem more than we should. And like you mentioned, I think I'll leave with this last statement, is that science and technology has a tremendous role to play in this sustainable future.
Right. You said science and technologies has a tremendous role in the role ahead for sustainable future. And I would agree with that, because we mentioned that 20 years back, who would have thought that, Naril Paniwala would have like a smartphone today, and everybody has that, because that's, like I said earlier, we're in the greatest technological transition, and all of these technologies are so transformational that yes, there's going to be some disruption. We've got to be prepared for that. And there's going to be some transformation. We've got to accept that. And somehow I feel that it's inevitable. I don't know whether the word itself, it's so powerful and strong, inevitable, but I guess that's the way I think it is, and it will be, because even the COVID, if you see, what it has done is that for industries, it has, because of social distancing, there's lesser people at the industries, because of which there's more automation. And when there's more automation, the industry owners have realized that, oh, wow, I'm not paying so many people. And these people, I have just a machine which does the job of like 50, 100. It does not take leave. It does not take salary. There's no PF, works overtime, non-stop, and the list goes on and on. So obviously we've understood the downsides and the positives of COVID. And because of the nature, the capitalist nature that we are, we obviously are going to adopt this and adapt it in a big way, which is inevitable. And this is not happening in just one industry. It's happening across. Even, for example, I'll just give you an example of like a bank, ICICI Bank. At one point in time, to get loans, you had to go through a process of one month long process where you get in touch with the bank and they will send you people. You give them the account statement. It goes back and forth, and they'll look at your bank account, and then you'll get a loan, and so on and so forth. Now they have a 2-minute loan structure because there's a machine, a learning agent, which is built into the ICI. When you call onto the IVR machine, it opens up your credit history, understands that whether this person is capable or not of paying a loan. Basis on that, you get a loan or you don't get a loan. And this is slowly but creeping in all of our industries in major ways. And there is finance industries. There was one point in time, I used to go to a bank. We used to go do all their dealing with the checkbooks. And I don't remember the last time I stepped into a bank. We transact on a phone. It's digital. Maybe cryptocurrency will creep in. Maybe blockchain will come in. Maybe that will impact the banking industry. And so these technologies, these are so powerful that it challenges the powers that be. The powers that has kept us running so long. But these technology has the potential to kind of challenge it in a way where it's not wrong, but the narrative which is painted for a blockchain is that, it's going to disrupt the banking industry. But nobody is talking about a blockchain is a transparent system. A blockchain will let you do transfers without the middleman or the bankers or the institutions taking huge interest out there, and you'll be able to do seamless transfer. And so many. So I'm not saying that technology is the only tool or the savior. It has so many downsides, right? But it has a lot of potential. So what the point I'm trying to make is that we need to, I think, have a conversation and be prepared for the future, which we are sadly not, because our outlook doesn't allow us to go beyond, because our outlook has blinkers on, because that's the way we function, and change comes very, very difficult. To change completely, that means we have to let go of the past, let go of all the traditional things. Now, traditional things, obviously, those are, how do we do that is a challenge. As a think tank, what urgent policies or implementations would you urge the government, citizens, organizations to take to mitigate this problem?
Let me start with the basic. So as a think tank, what is it that we should be doing? Is very clearly we need to be looking at long-term issues. Both, actually, we look at short-term, medium-term, long-term issues, because sometimes you have enough insight into some of these things at various time scales. A lot of our modeling work is looking at the longer term, in the 2030, 2050. And sometimes you wonder, you're doing modeling and now we're doing 2100. Some of us are not going to be alive, right? But we still have to do it because we owe it to the future that we did think about these issues to the extent that we could. Because at the end of the day, you have to take a decision based on information you have today. Coming to the crux of your point, technology will creep onto us. It will overtake our lives in ways that we cannot imagine today. I think that is something that there is no doubt about, and the last 20 years has also shown us that in multiple ways. right? The fact that people getting recorded, people getting video recorded, and people in compromising positions that they, they shouldn't be. I don't think they even imagined of that future. But soon people are going to be like, I better be careful what I say, what I do when I'm in a public setting. Even if I say something offhandedly, it can be taken incorrectly. So let's make sure that I'm very careful. So it will creep upon us in ways. And I think that's where the government really needs to start stepping in to make sure certain kinds of things, unethical behaviors do not happen. We have gone, you did talk about digital currency, right? And let's not talk about cryptocurrency, because to me, that's a very special case of digital currency. It's still very expensive to transact in. I don't know if you are aware, in the past, to transact on shares, right? A stock market, used to pay a big amount as a fee. Today, now people have gone to almost zero fees, right? I mean, it's a very low fees to transact.
Which platform gives you zero fees?
No, I don't think so. I know in the US there are some platforms that have taken it to, so they will give certain.
So the least, as far as I know, Jay, that the blockchain is the only ecosystem which gives you the least possible fees for transaction, whether it's local or international transaction.
No. What you're talking about is the price.
Right.
What you're talking about is the price, right? But can you cost the infrastructure that you need in order to do what you're doing? See, let's be clear about this. Let's not look at price at all, because at the end of the day, the cost is to society, right? It's like saying that I don't pay any price to dispose of my garbage, because all I do is I go and throw it into my neighbor's yard, right? That's a zero cost. That's a zero price to you, but it's a cost to society as a whole. Somebody is paying for it. So I think let us be a little careful with this notion of zero cost in terms of cryptocurrencies, because there's a lot of literature also right now talking about the amount of energy that you are consuming to transact a cryptocurrency, a single Bitcoin is quite significant.
Very
it's
true.
A lot of energy.
Completely.
So, and I think we need to be very careful when we jump into these systems that, this is the classic case of, right? Printer is very cheap, but when you go to buy the cartridges, you realize that that's the true cost. So, let's not ever look at price. All I'm saying is that, you do have a situation where the platforms are also going to react, right? They're going to say that, what can I do? And I think banks, at the end of the day, today, I don't know. So what does the bank charge to transfer money from one account to the other within the same bank? I think it's very low.
It's quite high comparatively. It's a long process. So it's when there's a transfer.
No. If I were to transfer money from the same bank account, I have let's say a HDFC bank account. You have an HDFC bank account, and we transfer money. I think we pay what for 1 lakh rupees we pay 5 rupees or something. So, but let me tell you this: as time passes, that will also come down. I mean, you think the banks are going to banks are not going to allow? Because if they have to do blockchain, they'll have to invest in that infrastructure, right? And so one way or the other, they will charge you for it.
No, yes,
there's no free lunch.
No, exactly. No, not at all, Jay. I'm not saying the blockchain is free, but it's a transparent system. It allows you to see through everything. It's like, for example, at this point in time, people talk about money laundering, with the cryptocurrency, because nobody can. But the largest money laundering throughout history is being done with the banking industry. There is
there's no doubt about that.
FinCen.
But the point is that as long as you have jurisdictions in the world,
right,
where the law enforcement cannot get to,
right,
you're always going to have that problem. So that I don't think unless we become this one world where the law can go anywhere in the world and catch a person, till that time, I am very clear that you're going to have pockets of places where people will be able to do things that they normally should not be able to do, but they will be able to do it because they are where they are. Even the laundering that you're talking about is because banks in places that the law cannot get to. You see today, even the Swiss banks are opening up their books to Americans, and soon they'll open it up to Indian authorities. But it's a cat and mouse game. For every new system that opens up, a new avenue
Right.
will open up somewhere or the
Exactly.
other. So I don't ever buy silver bullets. What I'm
Everything is
also trying
being
to get at is not all digitization
right.
in the sense is
Right.
also good, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah, fair enough.
so second part that you did talk about the loan issue. Let me just add there, when you're talking about these machine learning, AI based algorithms, what have they learned on? They've been learned on the data of the past. The problem with that is that whatever biases that you had in your system in the past are going to creep into your future. And now you have somebody else to blame very conveniently, right? In the past, let's say you didn't give loans to people who were of a particular caste or a group. Suddenly, the system is doing that for you. And I think that's not acceptable. I think we need to make sure that, and this is where I think think tanks play an active role, is to be able to study systems that are in place or study what is going on, study the algorithms, study what's happening, and point out the problems and also plausible fixes to those particular problems. I don't say, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but figure out how to change the water without throwing the baby out. I think that's the important thing here. And I think all think tanks have a very important role to play, because they will have to assemble expertise in these kinds of things, and ideally people who are sort of, who have seen the industry, who have seen the market, combined with people who are young and able to give a new perspective. I think both need to be brought together and deal with it.
Right, perfect. Not everything about digitization is good. Digitization comes with its own problems. And the rate at which technology is growing, there needs to be have a larger conversation when you talk about technologies such as artificial intelligence or biotech, which is at this point in time we also talking about synthetic biology. There is a larger conversation now going on, floating around, on how the possibility of the Wuhan the virus could have been a Wuhan lab leak, because with synthetic biotech, people are able to genetically tinker around with the source code of life. And there is this thing called as bio warfare there. So not everything with technology is good, obviously, and that's the reason I believe that we need to, not just celebrate innovation and technology, but also kind of create a larger group of people and address this growth of technology, because it has the potential of going out of hand also. So, as would you like to talk about some of your implementations that you have done at CSTEP?
I think you're right. That is the nature of technology or science or knowledge. I think even the parables in the Bible talking about the apple, right? Knowledge has this downside to it, is that you are suddenly in a new future, and once the Pandora's box is open, you cannot put all those things back in again. As much, I'm not a student of biology. We've not really studied this issue, but yes, it is a very there are two words I use, is promising and scary future. Right? It is both. It is both at the same time, and simply promising because you could solve certain problems which you may not have been able to solve otherwise. Right? I'm reading so much interesting stuff on bacteria using to take care of waste or convert certain things from other things. I mean, these are bioengineered organism also that could do some of these things. So I'll give you two examples of the work that we've done. One is the work that we did with rooftop photovoltaic for city of Bangalore, where we mapped all the roofs available and said how much rooftop generation can happen from each of the roofs. And we've done it in such a manner that any homeowner can click on their own roof in this system, and it can calculate for them how much available space, how much they need to put on their roof, how much money they will save, what is the payback period. All these things are available to them with a click of a button. So it's something that was done through, mapping the entire city in one shot, which was using a technology called LIDAR, light detection and ranging. The great advantage to that is that that same data can be used even to estimate if rainfall happens, how much will flow into what kinds of places.
Wow.
Right? And so now suddenly that same data can be used for that. I wouldn't want to talk about the data, how it can be used for bad uses, right? But these are the good uses that could be happening. The other one could be the municipal authorities look at the data and start asking people and checking people's tax payments, right? A person is saying that my house is only 1,200 square feet when it's actually 2,400 square feet, right? And through this mapping, you can say, well, actually this guy's house is much bigger than, because he's built this extra floor that is not mentioned otherwise. So, all these are ways in which we could improve on our systems. And of course, there are downsides to every technology, but so this is one example. The other one is where we are working with the state government in the Health and Family Welfare Department and the Women and Child Development Department to look at malnutrition management. How do you manage malnutrition of the children who come to the Anganwadis, the child care centers? And this is also for the expectant mothers. So it's really intergenerational. We're talking about multiple generations. If you feed the mother well, the child will be born healthy, things like that. And so this is that system where we are trying to make sure that all the data is available. See, today when a child goes to a doctor, if the history of that child was available to the doctor, the person will be able to diagnose and treat the child better. And maybe our health outcomes, if we talk about child malnutrition, weight at birth, making sure that we become as good as the developed countries in the world. So I think these are two sort of examples of projects where we are actually doing impact on the ground. Typically, think tanks don't do this kind of stuff. I mean, think tanks are usually out there putting out reports and talking about what needs to be done. Here is an example of actually where we are, not to use the proverbial term, but we are getting our hands dirty with actually doing work on the ground. Our hope is that these are demonstration systems that will help accelerate either renewable energy uptake, which is the first example, or a more transparent and I would say long-lived system that captures data. So then tomorrow now you have a child that has health records since birth or since before birth, because the mother is also in the system. So we have a record of the child over a long period of time, and we are able to do good studies on our people and produce good healthcare for them, provide good healthcare for them. There's much a slip between the lip and the cup when it comes from lab to pilot to actual implementation. What is successful in one may not be successful in the next, and what is successful in both may not be successful in the final. So I think we are still in those stages where we're trying to show that, yes, this is indeed a way in which we could actually do things.
The clean energy transitions. Do you see India making that transition? If yes, what's the timelines, do you think? And what could be the catalyst? Do you see the future of mobility, electric cars, solar vehicles, possibly autonomous vehicles ever coming in and driving that conversation forward?
The usual answer a lot of people like to give is all of the above. So the places where I feel there'll probably be a non-linear change in my mind is electric vehicles, simply because of the cost of running. The running costs are much, much lower than in the IC engine cars. And that is going to push people over much faster. The biggest hurdle right now is infrastructure, right? Where do I charge my car? Where do I do this? And I think this is where, I think the whole public-private partnership model will actually work, is that there will have to be policies from the government, along with certain kinds of SOPs, to basically nudge it through this initial phase, allow for certain kinds of infrastructure to come into place. Private players can come in and then start operating in certain places. And that will actually, I would say, accelerate the movement in this particular direction. I think there is I'm very hopeful of the electric vehicle transition. Autonomous vehicles, I'm not so sure, because a lot of it rides on a lot of other technologies all working together. Maybe in India, we may not see, but you may see it in pockets, right? So there'll be certain places where the autonomous vehicle may work completely fine. Let's say, for example, the Reliance factory in Jamnagar, right? Huge area. Within the factory, rules are obeyed, I'm sure, and so there they could have an autonomous vehicle taking people from place to place. You don't need a person to take you around. But that said, I'm not so sure about that. But electrification of our economy, by and large, I see that definitely happening. A lot of it happening.
Over the years, the largest polluters have been the Western countries because of the consumption. But now suddenly, because of the population that we have, both India and China is being blamed for the climate crisis. What are your views on something like that?
If we look at the total carbon budget that is available, right, that 450 ppm that I talk about, and the 50% achieving 50% chance of 2 degree centigrade rise, the problem is that India has barely made a dent in the carbon budget, but the worry is that we will make a dent, right? While all the Western nations have already made their major dent, and now it is their turn to cut their carbon emissions, but they seem to be putting the pressure on India to do
it. Right.
And I think it is again, if we talk about equity and fairness, I don't think it is fair. I don't think it should be fair on the poor in India. I mean, quite honestly, it is the poor in India that will suffer, not the rich. The poor that will suffer. And I think there has to be some way in which the compensation for that happens. There is some way in which either, in terms of money, but money is useless in some ways. It is only used to buy some things. Maybe technology. And I think that's where we can start looking at, either carbon capture, new forms of hydrogen, battery technologies, looking at, solar technologies, lithium ion batteries I already talked about. And all these are technologies, or even energy efficiency technologies, where, we talked about industry being a big polluter. If all these technologies are available to India at a price that is much lower than what we would have to go out and buy, then maybe India could say, you know what, we won't be emitting as much CO2 as you did over your lifetime of development.
Right.
We could possibly take another path that could be a low carbon future. And to be honest, if a democracy of 1.3 billion people are able to do that transition, it is a lesson to the rest of the world, the Africas, the South Americas, the entire developing East Asia. All the countries can then say, okay, you know what, India did it. Clearly, we can also do it. I mean, with the diversity and the complexities associated with India, I think that is one place where I think India really needs to not only, I mean, the commitment is there, the intention is there, but I think it's time the Western nations also stepped up and said, yes, we appreciate what you're doing. Here is how we will help you transition and move to a low carbon future, which is desirable by all, right? At the end of the day, 2 degree rise, average 2 degree rise in temperature will affect different people differently, and it will affect India in multitude ways. And we don't know. That's the other point, is that there's so much uncertainty around it. We don't know how it will affect certain people. We know that the temperature rise will happen in certain places. There'll be more droughts, but then also there'll be more rainfall. In fact, some models have shown there's going to be more rainfall in certain places, which also means that certain types of crops may not be able to be grown in those places anymore. So there are all these adaptation things that also are needed by our country, by our people, regardless.
Right. Thank you, Jai, for taking time and being part of the podcast. It was a pleasure conversing with you. I pushed a couple of things. I apologize if I kind of pushed a couple of things, but you know what? I really enjoyed the conversation. My last question to you: what would it take to create a sustainable, inclusive, diverse future? Because we talk about India being the next superpower. We've got all the ingredients that it takes to be a superpower. We are an IT leader. The startup community is growing amazingly well because of the internet. Everybody's got the access to knowledge knowledge is being democratized because of internet, though there is a digital divide because there's a rural population which needs to be kind of maybe somehow looked at, and maybe they should be taken in, or given the tools to kind of explore the world through internet and stuff like that. What would it take to create India into a global superpower? Technology, what, how do you see?
I will give you a very out of left field answer, and my answer is a relook at our value systems. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to think about. And I hope the COVID pandemic has helped a lot of people look at that, right? Let me give you a couple of examples. One is, do we care about our fellow human beings, right? Or is it I, me, myself? This has nothing to do with science and technology. It has nothing to do with what you study in sociology, psychology. It's about what is your value system? What is it that you have got that says that, I care about not just me or my family, but I also care about my neighborhood, my state, my country, and my world, right? And maybe that's all in the reverse order, right? That is, you care about yourself last. That is, you care about your society more. And so that is I think that will help us take care of a lot of things, right? So let's look at issues related to equity. I think today, the I, me, myself will go away. If that goes away, I will start thinking about, the person who comes and, let's say, does work for me. I will start caring about, is this person being paid enough to have a decent quality of life, right? Am I the one who's hoarding the money to be, bequeathed to my progeny once I die, as opposed to saying that, actually, it is unfair. I mean, the notion of fairness and unfairness comes from a value system. And I think that is the primary thing. And I think that is essentially what it is. The moment we get our value systems right, and, in the way that it will be towards this sustainable future, global future. And we also have to think in terms of, the human mind is very limited in some ways and is expansive in other ways. To be very honest with you, I don't think you probably knew, or none of us knew, our great-great-grandfathers, right? Right? So imagine the same, that we are asking to change an environment or a system that's going to impact our great-great-grandchildren. We'll never have met them. Right? But what is it that will reach them is the way we valued what we value today. Saying that we valued the fellow person's life. We valued that everybody got along. Everybody got a fair shot at education, healthcare. Everyone was taken care of. In the age of abundance, it is not abundant for the few. It has to be abundant for everyone. So I think that is the most important thing. I will say that will take us there. I don't think I am qualified enough to answer how we'll get there. But I will say I feel that is the most important, because it will also come up in, let's say, the artificial intelligence that we look at, right? If we think about machine learning systems, we are providing loans to these people. We are the same system if we put in place and we don't impart our value system to that, saying that, look here, we need to give a leg up to, or give a 5% bonus to certain sets of people because they have been historically underprivileged or being discriminated against, then I think we are not doing a value-based system job. I think the value-based system has to say that, yes, we need to figure out a way in which these people can be given a little bit of a leg up because they have been traditionally have been discriminated against, so hence we need to do that. But if we say, no, we'll just automate this and create an artificial intelligence system that's going to produce, I mean, AI systems can do the same thing for HR. They'll say that, hiring, right, discriminate women most of the time because they find that, women don't really rise up through the career ranks of an organization as fast as men do. So hire men. That's a very systems gone wrong is the word I would use. And I think that's where the only protection we have from that is a very clear conscience from a value system that we create, that's saying that this is what our value system has to be, and this is how we will deal with people, with life, and our environment. At the end of the day, we are talking about our environment, right? Climate change is not a problem for the Earth. The Earth can handle high temperatures. It's the humans that can't handle it.
Right. What a profound note to end on. Yes, I mean, the earth can handle, we cannot. And you said something very, very interesting. You said that we are, beings with limited capacity, yet, or we can be expansive in a thought, and that's what makes us unique. We have the potential to destroy the entire earth or the universe. Plus, we have the potential to make this small speck of maybe, when you look from a lens, like from another, maybe like a solar system, you'd see like, oh, that's nothing. But we are the thing that's unique. We make this place unique. And that's, and you said, yes, somehow empathy needs to come in, or system needs to be aligned with the technology that we are building, because that's the only way we'll be able to create an inclusive and diverse ecosystem where we handhold the most vulnerable. And that's the only way forward. We, like I mentioned, I'm going to repeat this again, we in the greatest technological transition that is ongoing, and in this decade itself, I think we're going to see technologies which is going to be almost magical. How we leverage that to the benefit of mankind is going to decide the future of humanity. And I guess, I hope and I pray we are not really good with our decisions, but I hope that this time we make a right choice and right decision on climate change.
Yeah, I'll just change the word. Instead of saying aligning with technology, I think it has to be pervading our technology. Our value systems has to pervade in our technology. It should not just be aligned. It's not next to each other. It is within. Because only if the value systems are within that entire system will that system actually take care of some of the issues that you talked about. I think equity, fairness, all these are issues that definitely need to be imbibed in this technology, and it has to be part of every little element.
Lovely. Thank you, Jay. Yes, we are getting into the space where, yes, it's all possible. Yes, it's all possible. It's only if we take the right choice. And thank you for being part of the podcast. To my listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. It was great chatting with you.